You're listening to the Round the Blind podcast with Ben and Levi. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit subscribe for more content. Now let's get started. Welcome to Round the Blind, guys. This week we are joined with David Strickland. He is a wildlife management know-it-all. He's going to give us everything, guys. He is a very intelligent gentleman in terms of wildlife management. He has a couple of huge projects that he's got going on. He's got tons of information. It's going to be a fun one. So what's going on, David? What's going on, Levi?
Hey, gentlemen, good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Yeah, David, if you don't mind, go ahead, tell us who you are, what you do, and any plans you've got coming up in the future that you'd like to share with us.
Absolutely. So, I've been around this part of the country for about 50 years now. So says my mother and father. I was, put in the backpack at a very young age, toted wherever my dad went, and that meant to the dairy farm or to the woods or to the lake or whatever. And I took a very early interest in not just shooting everything that I could, cleaning everything that I could, and eating everything that I could, but also a huge interest in what made it tick. What years made this particular wild game species prosper, and what years are the factors in certain years that made a particular game species maybe potentially go on the decline. And so, I just took all those things. I'm a person by nature who takes everything to the outer limits of my knowledge or the boundary that there is, and that might be all the way down to the chemistry of something. And I've just, I've always been blessed like that. And to have those interests, sometimes people would say it's not a blessing because I definitely get absorbed in the subject matter, and I don't let go of it. But currently basically as a hobby, and I only really do it for friends at this point, or the acquaintance of friends. It's typically plantation owners and things of that nature that are wanting to change the landscape, or what some people might call it the biosphere, the biome, the habitat on their property. Those guys will get with me, and I'll put together a consult plan. I'll walk out there, I look at what they want. The one guy might want quail, one guy might want turkeys and quail, one guy might want specifically waterfowl, one guy might want bigger white-tailed deer, and some of the guys that I work with want them all. In some cases, that's a possibility. In some cases, it's not. But my biggest interest in my later days of life have been the dynamics that surround hunting and the politics that surround hunting. And that all goes back down, as you guys know, to our Second Amendment. It's all about hunting and the Second Amendment are tied tightly together.
Right.
That's kind of who I am. I've got a degree in biology and minor in environmental sciences. I was a biologist for the U.S. Forest Service, a biologist for the Department of Natural Resources, later a game warden. And I got out of that public service work in probably about 2001, I think it was. I've been in the private enterprise ever since.
So, with all the school and your degrees, what has translated to your business now, your job, then even just each deer season or duck season? How has that translated to it?
Well, so as a wildlife manager, you have a running tally of things going on, so you don't really look at each season except for as part of a longer duration on that cycle of land. So I think what you were asking was, how does each season add itself into the overall plan? Is that what you were asking?
Just I guess it's between college and then OJT, on the job training, through all your years through the service work. How is that translated to your deer season personally? How's that translated to success in the field for you personally? And the job you hold now, or the low country wildlife management consultant business? Like how's
Okay,
that
so I
translated?
got you. Well, I'm a very strange individual in that I manage and have access to some of the neatest and prettiest and what's the word for it? Well-maintained private grounds in the state. But I get my kicks and my challenges from finding a mature buck on public land, and I might hunt that specific buck all year, or I'll hunt in that region all year. And sometimes I get lucky and get him, and sometimes I don't. To be honest with you, sometimes when I don't, that's to me almost as good as getting them. I have ended the chapters in a lot of public land mature bucks that, you know, the end of the story is never the best part of the story, I guess is the best way to put it. So I'm always driven to find a better public buck, and the same applies for turkeys and waterfowl. You know, though I have the option to hunt turkeys, and a lot of my friends that you guys will meet and have seen probably as members on the syndicate and whatnot will attest to it. You know, I'll choose hunting public land, wild game any day, every day over private land hunting. And I don't know why that is. And that's not to knock it. I'm just a guy that wants it to be as full of challenges and as hard as it can be. As I want those memories to really be stacked full of hurdles and accomplishments and achievements and knowledge learning and things of that nature. And plus, I really just like walking when there's no boundaries. I don't like boundaries. You know, I like to put my gun in my stand on my shoulder and go where I want to go, how I want to go there.
So have you always been a public land guy, like even when you were in college or even whenever you
Oh yeah,
were a young
so
buck?
my father, yeah, absolutely. My father is probably the driving factor behind that lunacy that's in me. You know, he attended Clemson University. I was born right before he went to the university, and so he was packing me through the woods of Fance Grove and the Andrew Pickens district of the Sumter National Forest, you know, all the time. You know, I came from a family that has very little money, and so public land, you know, we were the laymen, we were the blue collar people. Public land was what we had. You know,
Right.
I'm talking early 1970s here. There was the thought process of hunting leases really did not exist in the 70s. It was more like a group of guys that might know each other, and one of them had land and they'd form their own little club. But hunting leases, like you see now, where people from Florida come to South Carolina or people from South Carolina go to Arkansas, that was kind of a concept that was just in its infancy in that era. So public land was where it was at for people like me and my family and most of the people that I've been around, you know, and but you know, that's again, you know, I love sitting on private land and seeing how big a deer we can grow. You know,
Right.
I love it when the homeowner or the landowner, one of his children or a friend or accomplices harvest a really big buck. You know, I take a lot of pride in that, and I feel a lot of joy in that, as they do as well. And that's what it's about, really, when it comes to me being an integral part of that team, is just, you know, maximizing and fulfilling that landowner's potential and his goals.
Yeah, so that's awesome.
I'm a public land freak, man. That's what I am.
Yeah, so that's awesome. I think Levi and I have both, you know, primarily hunted public land, and but one thing that I'm interested in is your kind of game warden background. So and I feel like, you're, as a game warden, you're going to get to know a lot of people that are going to benefit a lot of stuff, and not only you're going to be the enemy, right, to a lot of people, but there's going to be a lot of opportunities for you to connect and make an impact outside of just being a conservation agent. At least in my opinion. Could you shed some insight on that?
Well, I'm gonna burst your bubble. So to do that, first I really want to, you know, I still have a lot of friends that are the proper term is conservation officer, but we all use the term game warden because that's what everybody knows. I still have a lot of friends that are game wardens. And I still have a lot of friends that are biologists for the state. And so you're absolutely true. Your statement's true in that there are a lot of people that you get to know as a game warden. Some good, some bad, some in between. And so you get a lot of tips, but you also really get a great insight into the workings of the human element. And that's, well, Joe killed a bigger buck than Bob, so Bob's going to tell on Joe or make something up that Joe never did to begin with, and you spend a lot of time trying to sort out who's telling the truth. But, you know, my big problem with, so I had an absolutely phenomenal captain. That was Johnny McClellan. And I had a phenomenal lieutenant, and that was Scotty Powell. And I had an absolutely stellar, one of the most genuine, kind-hearted men you'll ever meet in your life as a sergeant. That was Henry Stackhouse, who is now a captain. So I worked for what I consider to be the best of the best as far as that group. And I came on in a time frame where there was still a lot of guys like me that were hunter-driven and fishing-driven going through and wanting to become game wardens. But I'll tell you specifically, in my class of 25 game wardens, that there were only 3 of us that actually hunted and fished. The other 22 did not hunt and fish.
Yeah.
And that struck me when I was going through the wildlife and the police academy, and something was weird about that. And it turned out to be that. So you have a lot of people that use the game warden platform to become highway patrolmen, sled, et cetera. And then you have a select few like that take the job and pursue the job because that's really what they want to do. They want to make a difference for hunting and fishing. Now, in today's day and age, back when I was doing it, which was 97 through 2001 or 96 through 2000, I can't ever keep years straight, I was still allowed to work and do my job, which was to go catch not the guy that didn't have his life jacket right or the guy that forgot to check his fire extinguisher. I mean, yeah, we worked that type of stuff. But under my captain and my lieutenant, my sergeant, we were after the true legitimate poachers. And we made some phenomenal cases on some guys that were literally the scourge of wild game and fisheries. And I'm talking about setting up full nights, multiple nights in a row, regardless of the weather, hiding behind, markers in a channel or laying behind a dike all night long, and those guys are still out there. I'm good friends with a couple of them. But today, the bureaucratic red tape that those guys have to deal with beats them down to a point where they just don't feel like putting in that effort all the time. And you'll see, like, there was a big case the other day that is all over social media. A bunch of boys were out in Huntington Beach State Park cast netting and,
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
all the redfish, all the clams, undersized flounder, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I'll just call him an acquaintance that was familiar with that case. And it had been like 7 calls about those people before someone finally responded.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because somebody didn't want to respond. It was because the call wasn't getting to the right guy. And the call finally got to the right guy, and that ended real quick, as you saw all over social media. So
right.
Yeah. So a big question I've got is that I'm kind of curious on it, and to kind of piggyback off what you're saying is, so do you think that's because the state has identified they can make more money off of the agents going and giving a guy the ticket who maybe shot a couple minutes early, or the guy who accidentally put lead in his bag, that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. It's a time versus energy versus effort continuum, right? So to catch a poacher, a real hardcore poacher, which they're everywhere, and they've gotten better and better at what they do, and their technology is outstanding these days. it takes someone that is not only driven, but someone who is wood savvy or water savvy, and someone who literally loves what he does so very much that he's going to take time out of his personal life, because these guys are operating at night. And so, like Levi there with his youngin sitting on his lap, how hard would it be for me to say, hey, Levi, I need you to work, from 6 o'clock p.m. till 6 o'clock a.m. because Joe X is out there spotlighting deer and we can't catch him with the airplane, so I'm gonna need you on the ground, and have him work that 4 or 5 nights in a row.
Right.
Levi's gonna get burnt out unless he has some really good morale behind him. The times are just changing. I mean, that's the bottom line. So, I'm a huge supporter of SCDNR law enforcement, and it comes down to that money. One of my very good buddies reached out to me, sent me an email that literally, I'll just say it like it was, it risked his career. Send me the email. But after all the litigation that went through our General Assembly for turkey, limits and tags and everything like that, the very first year that all that stuff was applied, all of the game wardens in that particular district were told that they needed to focus on the NOAA offshore reports and patrols, as NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, gives the Department of Natural Resources a lot of money to run these offshore patrols, even though the officers can't really make a case because it's outside of the EEZ, the 3 mile zone. So to make the case, he can write it, and then he's got to get federal agent involved and so on and so forth. So it's really just out there for show, but they were told, and I have the email, and it's from an upper level SCDNR LE person. And I feel that in that email, you can even read his chagrin at having to send it, saying, hey, I know the turkey season's upon us, but you guys have to get in these hours for the NOAA patrols.
So I was talking to my buddy Jeff Day. He's the game warden down in down the island area, like John's Island, that area, not Georgetown, but Kiowa. And he said just about the same thing. He said you pretty much could have got away with killing 12 turkeys all season because they had everyone focused on the water instead of in the woods. Because I originally called him. I want to get your take on this too. I was turkey hunting, I think in Alex, South Carolina, out past Monks, and Alvin, yes, it's the old dove fields. And I was walking around scouting, and there's literal foxholes from hogs, just rooting it up. And I mean, there was in the field. It was in, it was like they had like a field tilled up and had something planted, and the field was tore up. And then there were like these like saplings, like on the other side of the field, and that was tore up. And there's, like I said, like literal foxholes where hogs came through and rooted it up. And in the book, it says you can only use whatever's in season, right? Like you can use whatever firearm or weapon, whatever's in season, right? So that time in between turkey and deer season, what is there you can use? And I know on private ground you can kill them all year round, but on public ground on Francis Marion, you would think that if the money's being put towards these fields or for management, like, you know what I mean, to sow and till, that they wouldn't care how the hogs were killed because they're so destructive. I really want to get your take on that. See what you think.
Well, so you just vectored into 2 different topics. You vectored into food plots, and then you vectored into what some people call invasive species or feral species, i.e. the feral hog.
Right.
I don't want this to turn into a bashing session, but you're seeing it. There's anybody with eyes can see that something is broken. Now, I believe that I've been in this business long enough and having worked in that agency that I know exactly what's broken. And it's not the people on the tractors, and it's not the people that are out there on the fields, be it in the Cat 1 waterfowl WMAs or in the SCDNR food plots, and et cetera. It's the upper level management that is not giving the people the tools to work with or the equipment to work with, or what I truly believe most importantly, the motivation and morale to do their job the way it needs to be done, and to quit putting red tape in front of these people and let them do their doggone jobs. And I say that because I know a lot of them, and that's exactly what they tell me. And I was one of them, and that's exactly what happened to me, which made me go, wait a second, this is not going the way it needs to go. But so I'll touch on your food plot issue real quickly. Other than the Waterhorn and the Andrew Pickens district of the Sumter National Forest, those two places, Waterhorn obviously being one of the units in the Francis Marion, the food plots on our national forest get an F, an absolute F. And I've been working on that through the syndicate for 5 or 6 years, and I have never in my life gotten the amount of excuses that I have on that one subject matter. Now, if we want to go further and talk about dove fields, I would give the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources a pretty solid B+. So they do a really good job on dove fields. They do a really good job on the Waterhorn food plots, the Andrew Pickens food plots, which is in the upstate division of the Sumter National Forest. Long Cane District of Sumter, they do a little better, and then the Inori District, they do a little better there as well. Down here in the Low Country, which is where you were, the Francis Marion, it's an absolute F. And that applies to the United States Forest Service and the Department of Natural Resources. Because under that wildlife management agreement, the national forests are in the WMA program, and some of those food plots are under the responsibility of the United States Forest Service, some of them by delineation. And there's a map that you can get, and you can find out through a lot of hardship, because it's crazy to find. It took me forever to get it all nailed down as to whose responsibility each food plot is. The U.S. Forest Service there's no such thing as a triple F grade, but they get triple Fs on all of their food plots. Just the worst stuff. I don't mean to say that. I mean, look, I'm out there in these food plots. I see these food plots. I know the importance of these food plots, and if they're not grown over with red maple, small scrub pine, and sweet gum, meaning that they've been left fallow, then they're just barren rock fields that may or may not have been disc. They're not getting fertilized, they're not getting lined, and they're not getting planted properly. And the guy that's in charge of the food plots in the Francis Marion for the SCDNR is a jam-up guy. He's just understaffed, and he gets run around all the time. And, we've had those talks. And I feel terrible. I can't imagine being assigned to a task where, by the very nature of the task you're assigned and the tools and time that you're given to do it, that you're going to look bad. That just can't feel good, But yeah, the food plots across the state are god-awful. And we have both the Department of Natural Resources and the U.S. Forest Service doing a god-awful job of addressing truly an action stance on addressing feral invasive species, which obviously the two that we're up against big time is wild hogs, which have been here for a very long time, and the coyote, which, started showing up in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then really blossomed by about 2010, 2012. I mean, they were just, as prolific as fire ants at that point in the Low Country. But there's nothing being done. There's a lot of talk. There is a group called APHIS, which is a federal group that's in charge of invasives, be it plant or animals, and they give funding to the U.S. Forest Service. And I'll tell you how bad it is. They bought one of the big boar buster traps for the U.S. Forest Service. That trap's never been used. and that's been 10
Really?
years that they've had that trap that's never been used. Yeah, they use some single traps, and the same guy that's in charge of doing the food plots for SCDNR does what he can with those single fence traps for the feral hogs. But, I mean, you're not going to make a dent in those. To address the second part of your point about why don't they just let us go out there and just, shoot them whenever we can, well, the biggest answer, and this is me, I'm in support of them on that one to some extent.
Right.
You can't just have humans running through a national forest willy-nilly 24/7, 365 all year long, or you will have a very low breeding response. It would be like me taking you back to your high school days. If you ever had that one bully or that group of people that, were always picking on somebody, and I made you be around those people constantly, and you constantly got picked on. How much homework would you get done? How much maybe girl chasing activity or whatever it is, football or sports. I mean, you would not feel very good. You would not be in your normal state of behavior. So
And I'm sure
human pressure is a real thing on the behavior of wild game species.
For sure. And I'm sure there's going to be like you were saying earlier. Like I'm sure the people that are up to no good, like the poachers, who go in and kill the deer. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I wasn't trying to get off topic with that. But I know you're talking a lot about the habitat and the wild. Like you're giving a lot of people A's or B's or F's or triple F's about like habitat and the environment. Can you tell people about Carolina Wildlife Syndicate and like why you started it and how you've helped improve the ecosystem?
So the Carolina Wildlife Syndicate came about from me getting pushed by a whole lot of people that knew I had worked in a biological position for the Department of Natural Resources and as a game warden. And they knew that I had already written a couple of articles that had been kind of circulated around about, declining traditional wild game practices, management practices, BMPs, best management practices, to take the term that the state and federal agencies use. And it was just becoming more and more prevalent that these BMPs, they were just traditionally, they've worked for, 150 years, and they were excellent, and they produced results, were all of a sudden being shot full of holes by people that literally just had a PhD in front of their name, but had very little on-the-ground experience. And that's something that we need to delineate here. So I'll always respect the person that has a PhD, because that means that they had the brain power to stick it through the master's program, through the PhD program, and get that stamp. I will also always respect someone that has been on the ground in the heat, in the weather, learning about the ecosystem and the habitat in an all-encompassing fashion, because they're reading books as well, equally as much. Now, you take a PhD guy or girl that is actually a true hunter and or fisherman, if we're talking fisheries, and they literally combine the best of those two things. They're on the ground, have spent time on the ground, and you also are book smart, then now you have what could be the savior of wild game. Unfortunately, those guys usually get pushed to the corner. And we are blessed to have a really good one, Charles Ruth, here at the Department of Natural Resources, but he'll be retiring soon, and I don't put a whole lot of faith in the young man that's coming up under him. And hopefully he's going to mature. I really need him to mature. Our wild game species really need him to mature. And then there's another guy, Dr. Michael Chamberlain, who is probably, if you ever wanted to ask David Strickland who he looks up to that's a wild game biologist and has a PhD, it's going to be Chamberlain, because he doesn't care whose feelings he hurts. He tells it just the way it is. And so those are the guys that we're going to have to lean on. So, but the syndicate came about because guys were pushing me, and they knew I had a little bit of a voice, and they were like, dude, they will listen to you, meaning the Department of Natural Resources, the Forest Service will listen to you. We will support you. And I literally just got to the point where I was tired of seeing poor management practices. And one day back in April, I think it was 3.5 years ago, I said, okay, I'm going to do this. I found some people that I knew would be very beneficial. One was really good in statistics. That was Tuffy Edwards. God rest his soul. That man was about as good for wild game as you could find. And then a few other individuals who I can't really say their names because they're still within agencies that helped me out a lot on seeing what's actually going on these days behind the closed doors. One of my fire experts, when it comes to proper firing effects would be Wilton Strickland, but these people all started pushing me. And so I said, I'm tired of seeing it happen with the taxpayers' money. I'm tired of seeing it happen with the hunting license buyers' dollars not making it on the ground. And so we formed up. And 3.5 years later, I think we're encroaching on 8,000 members. And, we keep our content very clean. I don't allow any, bashing or cursing or anything like that. I mean, we're not trying to do chest thumping about who killed the biggest buck, though we love to see deer pictures and waterfowl pictures. And once I built up some member numbers, then I started pushing the Department of Natural Resources and the U.S. Forest Service to sit down, and they did. And so they started sitting down. We started having meetings, and I started going to these facilities, looking at all the issues they were having, and I just started calling a spade a spade.
Yeah.
And in the case of the Forest Service, it was mainly about fire and food plots because their fire effects were just god-awful. Anybody that walks through the Francis Marion right now, a wildfire has better firing effects than the Francis Marion U.S. Forest Service, but they have gotten better. A lot better, especially in the course of the last 2 years. But that's why I formed a syndicate. I was basically pushed to do something I strongly believed in, and I really believe in. This will segue us to where we need to go to really put the cap on this whole thing. Hunters are going to have to stick together. We got to unite.
Right.
We've got to learn our subject matter. We've got to learn how to present it. We've got to be factual. But most of all, we've got to stick together. We have to unite. We are up against some really, really nasty stuff out there.
So how do you think we as hunters can help that? How can we get involved? How can we kind of come together? How can we put pressure on the people who are trying to, one, not funding, specific, things that need to be funded, and two, how do we keep the sport that we all love?
So the first one is really difficult because back in the early 1900s, we were, as a human population, running across the landscape and just whacking anything that moved. And then the Great Depression in 1926 through about 36, I think it was, really, I mean, if you didn't have a gun and know how to hunt, you were starving. I could tell you stories about my great-grandparents that are just, mind-boggling. My great-grandfather was walking, 10, 12 miles a day to make a quarter a day and literally eating the potato skins. That's all he would eat so that the family could have the potato itself. But if he had a chance to shoot a deer or a squirrel or a turkey any time of that year, by George, it got shot. So our populations really started dipping down really low, and obviously that's when groups like Ducks Unlimited, from that split off, or I think DU split off from Delta Waterfowl or vice versa. I always get them confused. But groups like that, nonprofit orgs started forming up to protect the species. On down the line, you had the NWTF, Quail Unlimited, which became Quail Forever, the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, and et cetera. And then you got groups like the Dallas Safari Club, the Theodore Roosevelt Foundation, and so forth. You got the Quality Deer Management Association, and ironically, two of the NWTF and the QDMA both formed up here in South Carolina. That's where they were founded. So I used to say, okay, if you really want to make a difference, then one of the best things you can do is, become a member of those groups. And there's still some members that I say that, or some organizations that I say that about. As I have dove deeper into this, the syndicate activities where we have been to these sites, and I've seen various projects that come from a select few of those organizations. I would never give them my money ever again because it's just a scam, the end. And I really hope that they get their ducks and turkeys in a row, hint, because they did some absolutely incredible and wonderful things, and power and money became a mission instead of the actual species on the ground. And I push very hard against those things behind the scenes. I almost feel a little guilty for letting that hint slip out, but not. Those people need to know that, we support them and we give them a job. Their job is only because we exist. And so giving to groups, and I'm just going to say the ones that I really like. QDMA is phenomenal. They do a very good job. They have now joined alliances with the North American Deer. I can't remember what it was. It's shameful of me because I'm on the board for QDMA. I'm about to just get in a lot of trouble here, but my brain's so full of terminology these days. And Delta Waterfowl. I can't speak enough about those guys because they actually are addressing the subject matter, predation, habitat, breeding statistics, breeding logistics. And DU, don't get me wrong, DU still does some good stuff here, but they've got off of a little bit of what actually worked. And I've seen a lot of their projects that they've done into the millions and millions of dollars, and the project looks like a mud hole because nobody's upkeeping it. And all that money comes from members and from NACA grants, and it's disgusting to me when that much money gets spent and it doesn't benefit the hunter nor the species for any length of time.
So one question I've got based off of what you just said, I apologize for interrupting you.
No.
But we're talking about Ducks Unlimited. So there are, on the East Coast, there's a couple of DU, properties that I've seen are not the quality that you would expect when you hear it's a DU property. But I've also hunted some, in Kansas, a couple other states that are prime, waterfowl properties. So my question is why the disconnect? Why, especially on the East Coast, where that has the smallest waterfowl population, but some of the most passionate hunters, why on the East Coast are they not putting at least a portion of the focus that they put in the Midwest on the East Coast in the flyway that's struggling the most?
So this is what I'll tell you. I'm going to try to give you what I believe DU would tell you. Our job is not in the southern states. Our job is to protect the breeding grounds. That's typically what you hear from that. However, the answer that I believe would be the true answer to you is because you have huge money in the Midwest, and you have the ability to make huge gains in the Midwest or in the Mississippi and the Central Flyways, all the way to the Pacific Flyway, when you do a little bit. So you can do a little bit out there and gain a whole lot. Here, because of the state that the Atlantic Flyway has fallen into, you got to do a lot to get a little bit. And we've basically, as a Southeast region, the projects that I have seen, and I can name probably about $6 million of more than that, call it $8 million of Ducks Unlimited NACA grants, which is the North American Wetlands Conservation Act grant, where they, like you just said, I guess the word is less than desirable. I have other words for it, but since we're going to be publishing this, so we'll just stick with those. But it comes down to leadership and oversight, man. Emphasis, leadership, and oversight. And I don't care if that's on the service you got behind the gas station counter, at your local restaurant, at the mechanic's office, or Ducks Unlimited. It's leadership, emphasis, and accountability. And you can switch those things up and use them any way you want, but it's always going to start with the leadership. Then it's going to be what the leadership emphasizes, and then it's going to be who the leadership holds accountable. Any of those little pathways get messed up, and you wind up with a mud hole instead of a duck hole.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I think you can see it, and that's kind of the sad part. I mean, not even that I think you can see it, and that's the sad part because I feel like if and I donated to DU when I was in the Midwest, and I could see what the benefits were. And I quit donating before I got out here, but now that I'm out here, it'd be hard for me to start donating to them again because I don't see the benefit in the area that I'm in for what they're doing, and that's just my opinion. And I know there's other people that would disagree with me, and but that's kind of that's my that's how I feel about it. But
well, you feel right about it. So, I mean, that's the human element, the human psyche, the human personality wants to see bang for their buck. And that's whether you're giving money to a GoFundMe that's helping a family whose house burnt, or whether you're donating to Ducks Unlimited. And if you don't see the bang for your buck, in other words, the family whose house burnt down takes that money and they go out to Vegas and gamble it all the way, you're going to be pretty upset about that. Well, when we donate to Ducks Unlimited and we don't see something here on the ground in South Carolina, and Ducks Unlimited says, well, we're only really, our focus is the breeding grounds, well, fine, then go stay on the breeding grounds, but don't come down here and absorb millions of dollars in contracts through writing your NACA grants for our Department of Natural Resources and then not review the project and make sure the project went in properly and to the scope of work, and don't dump the maintenance on the project a year behind the project. Like I said, I'm going to go back. I still donate to Ducks Unlimited. I still donate to all those groups. I just really wish some of them would open their eyes as to the reputation that they're getting, because they all started off with such wonderful foundations. So that's one thing you can do. I started going, we got to do something else. And that was, I need to unify the hunters in South Carolina. And not all hunters are the same. Not all baseball players, football players, or whatever are the same, but we're all hunters, or we're all baseball players or whatever. But not all of us are the same. One guy might just hunt 2 times a year. He calls himself a hunter, and he is. Then you take another guy that hunts 180 days out of the year that calls himself a hunter, and he is as well. So what we got to do is capture the interest of all of those guys, and the interest is in what I call hunter satisfaction. And across the board, pretty much nationwide, hunter satisfaction is on the decline. Now, what does hunter satisfaction mean? It, to me, means that you probably at least got to see one species of game that you were hunting. So if I go into the woods and I see a doe, well, I've got some satisfaction there.
Right.
If I go into the woods 10 times and I don't see any deer sign, I don't see any deer, I don't see anything that shows browsing, then that's low satisfaction. And we're in a state, especially as you mentioned the Atlantic Flyway, where hunter satisfaction is really low when it comes to waterfowl. I'm old enough to remember seeing trucks from Arkansas parked at the Santee Delta and parked at the Wheeltown Bluff and parked at Low Falls Landing. Literally, guys from Arkansas were coming here to hunt. Satisfaction has turned so hard the other way that our state's losing millions and millions and millions of dollars. And myself and one other guy put together a little thing. It's about, we figured out it was somewhere between $43 and $60 million annually to hunters leaving to travel out of state just for waterfowl, just for ducks.
That's insane. That's an insane amount of money.
It's insane.
Yeah.
So what can you do? I mean, I tell people now, on this, join a group like the Carolina Wildlife Syndicate, participate in the conversations, say what you feel professionally as best you can, intelligently as best you can, keep to the subject matter as best you can. And whenever there's a meeting, when it comes to ducks, like the Aquatic Plant Management Council meetings, you got to go. Whenever there's a budget hearing for the Department of Natural Resources, you got to go. Whenever there's a deer tag meeting or a turkey tag meeting or something like that, you got to go. Because if you don't go, guess who's there? The politicians and the people that work for those agencies.
Right.
And that's who's going to make the decisions. You ain't going to have any say in it. And I attended, for over the course of the last 3 years, probably more meetings than I've ever attended in my life. And I was just pretty much appalled at what I was seeing happen. Because, our state takes millions and millions of dollars, and it's rewarded millions and millions of dollars through the Pittman-Robertson Act. I think we got like 19 million in 2019 or something. It was an exorbitant amount of money for our natural resources, just for the Pittman-Robertson money. And I have yet to see any improvements, man. That's on public land now, which is really, when it comes down to it, when we're talking, that's what matters. We're into the habitat management. There's no do that. Like, sit down and making sure that these people that work these jobs are doing what we need them to do. So what we've done is created work across the state of South Carolina. Now I've got the Florida, the Alabama Wildlife Syndicate, moving into probably the syndicate at some point. We're kind of like it means to the American Wildlife Syndicate, because the same problems that were in Carolina exist almost entirely across the nation one or another. And that's the mismanagement of public land, where wild game species are concerned. So what can you do? You can still keep donating. The membership to DU isn't a whole lot of money. You'll spend that one dinner, and they're going to do some good with it. Same with the NWTF, QDMA, Quail Forever. I mean, those groups are action stance groups. I really like Safari Club International, Theodore Roosevelt Association. Those are groups that the NRA. I mean, if you're not a part of the NRA, then you are missing the bus on protecting your hunting rights. Because to protect hunting, I know there's a lot of archery hunters out there, but you got to protect the ownership of firearms. If you've ever been to Africa, and I've spent some time in Africa, then they're one step away all the time. If it wasn't for the massive economy that's driven by safari hunting, people travel, Africa would be done. I mean, a family in Africa gets to own one bolt-action rifle of a 3-round capacity after going through some of the craziest stuff you've ever heard of in your life. If there's anywhere where a person needed to protect themselves, I'm sure you guys keep up with what's going on down there, that would be the place. So it's all linked together. And if you want to venture into that process, we can. Or you guys go ahead with what questions you might have.
No, I was just going to bounce off what you were saying. There was a foreign exchange student I had in high school. He's from the Netherlands, and I took him hunting whenever he was in Kentucky. We're allowed to have like a pellet rifle, and like nothing else because of their gun laws over there.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
Right. But I know I've seen a lot, like especially in the Carolina Wildlife Syndicate and other groups. Like I know you said, this might be a little bit redundant, that you said attend the meetings, email, talk to, like, I know email Congress people, blase. So how long has this been going on? How long have people been attending meetings, voicing their opinion, so nothing's changing? And what can, if there's continue nothing to change and people are voicing their opinions, showing up to meetings, what do you think the next step would be or should sense?
Yeah, Levi, I'm gonna drag you guys down a rabbit hole real quick, stop me if you. We'll start off with the 2011 hunting and fishing consensus. That's a federal study that is done across the landscape of the United States of America that asks a bazillion questions. But the keynote that you guys need to take away from it is this. In 2011, $36 billion was spent hunting and fishing, with about 45% of that, or we'll just call it $18 billion on hunting, in with a B, as in bravo. So bravo to all those hunters that spent all that money in 2011. The last consensus, which didn't go into near the depth and detail of the 2011 census, was done in 2016. We lost $10 billion in hunting and fishing revenue. It was only like $26.2 billion. If you start thinking of everything else you've heard, I know you guys have seen talking about license purchase decline and everything else. I know you see the attacks on the Second Amendment almost daily. Then that's when my senses start waking up. But I'm like, wait a second, there's something going on here. I start looking at public land wild game management and food plots that look like dirt pits and mud holes or grown up sweet gum thickets. Then I really start going, wait a second, there's a problem here. Then when I start seeing people being hired to the leadership positions in those agencies that have oversight over such activities as food plotting and wild game management, waterfowl management, and et cetera. And I know, because I sit down and talk with these people, and I know that they couldn't walk into the woods and identify a rub line. They couldn't walk into the woods and point down at turkey scratching. They couldn't walk into, say, a Cat 1 WMA, know to put the wind at their back and the decoys in front of them. And we've got problems, guys. And that's what's happening. We're getting people that are hired into these positions that do not have our best interests in mind. Now, why is that? Well, there's a huge movement, as you all know, because you see it all over the media every day, towards getting rid of our Second Amendment rights. So what's the easiest way and the quickest route to getting rid of the Second Amendment rights? Well, they tried to just outright take them. The Supreme Court said, nope, not going to happen. They tried to ban high-capacity magazines. That didn't have much of effect, and as a matter of fact, the Supreme Court in California just ruled that one null and void, and California just got their high-cap magazines back.
I saw that. You're talking about those pesky AR-14s, right?
AK-112 and the AR-14 with all these assault machine gun mini saws. So
yeah, the ones that just kill people without.
That's right. So then, and prior to that, obviously they went after they had the lead ban on waterfowl, which I've done enough studying to know that there's a lot of veracity to that. And as much as I hate steel shot and would much rather shoot a heavier non-toxic, that was a good, on many fronts, that was a good move. That was obviously, though, pushed by an action stance that was not consistent of hunters. And it still should have went through, so I'm going to give them that one. Now they went after the monolithic copper lead bullets, so your cup and core deer bullets, hog bullets, and you got a lot of states that are pushing for copper only. I'm like, hey, thanks, anti-hunters, because the GMX and the TTSX are absolutely deadly on game, so thanks, guys. But it's still a tactic. Then they have now come up with this thing, apex predator reintroduction. Guys, that's a dangerous one. If you look at Yellowstone and the McKenzie Valley wolf that was relocated there, which is roughly twice the size of the Rocky Mountain gray, which the predator niche was supposed to be void and filled, they knew what they were doing there. They've basically decimated the elk, the mule deer population in that entire area. I've been to Montana elk hunting where elk were prolific a year ago, 2 years ago, and now the hardware store pictures of nothing but wolf kills of 350-inch trophy bull elk, big mule deer, even black bears. That was by design. And as it trickles down, now you see more and more and more, and we have been for about 10, 15, 20 years, what I call single selective species management. And the keynote one for the Southeast is the red cockaded woodpecker. Well, I mean, and I actually, when I was in the Forest Service, I worked on the red cockaded woodpecker. It's a very interesting bird. It's one of the very few colonial birds there are. But we are literally destroying habitat that benefits our wild turkey, our white-tailed deer, our quail, with high-intensity fire across a huge landscape during the growing season when all the spring emergence, including turkeys and quail and everything else, are trying to lay, all for the red cockaded woodpecker. On the Francis Marion, we've seen massive hardwood eradication via the use of high-intensity and especially aerial high-intensity fire where the proper firing indices aren't followed. So we'll roll that all back up into something you guys can all get a hold on. If I was an anti-hunter or an anti-Second Amendment guy, and I was smart, I'd go, you know what? Probably the best thing I can do to get my mission accomplished is to make hunters unhappy. Well, how can I make hunters unhappy? Well, I can decrease the amount of game. Well, how can I do that? Well, all those things I just told you is exactly how you do that. And those are the things that are going on right now. So why isn't it being stopped? And it's because, gentlemen, tinfoil hat on, the deep state is real. Us to continue hunting. They do not want us to own guns. And they is a huge portion of this country that did not grow up and do not believe in the things that you and I and my fellow brothers and sisters believe in. They do not share the same beliefs we do. There's a medium of the road group that you can take hunting and you can show them, which is, there's a wonderful program that, and you can bring those people over because, I mean, let's face it, if you weren't raised around guns are big bang, and guns do, have the potential when used in the wrong hands to cause some pretty deadly occurrences, but so do cars, and everything. So,
Yeah.
but if I was an anti-hunter, I'd be like, or if I was an anti-Second Amendment guy, I'd be like, we got to get rid of the hunters. What's the best way to do that? We decrease the hunter satisfaction. What's the best way to do that? We implement programs that eradicate wild game. Boom. It's ingenious, and that's what they're doing. So how do we fight back against it? Levi, you mentioned writing your congressmen and your senators and all that hoopla. That doesn't work, gentlemen.
Right. Yeah.
What works is showing up in numbers at these meetings and writing letters and making phone calls. But I'm guilty of it. I get letters all the time, and if I was a congressman, I might have on it with some hoopla answer as well. Today's day and age where the good politicians, those that are, have so much that they're trying to fight with and so much that's laid upon their shoulders every day. I mean, look at the state of this country. And that's where it's at. So it's time for us to wake up because the anti-hunters and the anti-Second Amendment people, they wake up every morning with a mission on their mind. That's to take your guns and to take your enjoyment of hunting away from you. And they've infiltrated all the way to the top. I mean, to the very top. I work with the biologist at the U.S. Forest Service. He's an anti-hunter, straight up. And he's the biologist at a big national forest. Told me straight to my face when I kept bringing up several particular food plots that some elderly people that I know have hunted their entire lives. And I went into his office. I said, hey, can we talk about this? He said, yeah. I said, this food plot and this compartment. And that same conversation occurred like 3 times. And then one of the last meetings we had, I was like, hey, are you guys going to do anything like that? And the guy was like, I'm so tired of hearing people talk about that just because it's their honey hole. Something in that struck a chord with me, but I didn't know what it was for a little while. And I was like, and then it came together. I was like, wait, this is a biologist in the United States Forest Service. And he used the word honey hole in a negative way. Now, the biologists that I grew up knowing in the 70s, the 80s, and even into the 90s, and even there's still some out there today, I don't want to cast a bad light on all of them, wanted you to have a honey hole. They took their pride in the fact that you came walking out with a nice brace of ducks or quail or whatever, or a big deer or a nice doe or a turkey. They were like, I did that. I helped this guy do that. This guy is like, I don't want them to have that. That's anti-hunting sentiment at one of the upper level positions in one of the most famous and benchmark national forests in the United States.
Yeah, and that's crazy. So you've got some people out there who are completely anti-trophy hunting, but there's some people that can't identify exactly what trophy hunting is. Some people think, going and shooting a big buck or passing a smaller buck for a bigger buck, they consider that trophy hunting. They consider that unethical. There's people who consider, going in trying to shoot, 6 mallard drakes or 4 mallard drakes and then leaving the hole. They consider that trophy hunting. But there's some people who are completely against that, which is absolutely crazy. And so I'd like to know what your opinion is, and how you deal with the people who consider everything that you're doing to be trophy hunting, or everything that you're doing to be wrong. I remember when I was a kid. My parents told me. I know my parents. My uncle had told me, when you're driving down the highway after you shoot a deer, don't have the deer hanging off the bed of the truck. Don't let other people see it because other people don't like hunting. I grew up in Illinois, so there's a lot of them that didn't like hunting. But so I mean, what's your thought process on all of that? How do you manage, keeping kind of a level head between everybody? And you're not always going to be able to do that, but how do you manage it? What's your thought process on it?
Well, it's really tough because I'll be honest with you, I'm a violent person by nature. God made me and wired me a little differently, and up until I turned about 40, I was not afraid to jump in anytime, anywhere, and scrap it till the knees were off and the knuckles were gone. And I used to take those type of attacks real personal. And I got, when I formed this group up, I took some pretty hardcore attacks from some people in some pretty high-level positions within those agencies. And quite honestly, I wanted to settle it the old school way. And that might still happen, the good Lord willing, one day, because one of them really deserves it. But the bottom line is, how do I handle it now? Well, I'm older, I'm calmer, I'm more patient. I know all the intricacies of humanity and the way these people work. So the anti-hunter, strong anti-hunter, or anti-trophy hunter, they're basically the same person. If someone's saying they're anti-trophy hunting, they're anti-hunting, because trophy hunting is truthfully what drives everybody to hunt. Nobody's going out there to shoot one duck. Nobody's going out there to shoot a scabbed up spiked horn buck that's been run over by a car. Nobody's going out there to shoot a Jake turkey. Now, people will shoot all of those and be happy with them, but that's not why they were going out there.
Right.
That's why you don't see on the cover of American Hunter or Buckmaster's cow horn spike that's been run over by a car. I mean, it's pretty common sense. That's why when you look at the Ducks Unlimited magazine, it's not a dude standing on the front cover holding a merganser. Or when you look at NW magazine holding the Jake. We are all trophy hunters. Now, will I shoot a nice healthy doe? Daggum Skippy. If I see a buck that needs to be taken out and he's injured or something like that, but doesn't have good headgear, yeah, I'm going to take him out. But when I go to the field every single day, I go there to see the glory of God, and I go to hunt for the purpose of hunting, which is instilled in us from a very young age, to take a specimen of which we think is beautiful. So it's different in every mind's eye. If I go duck hunting and I kill 3 nice birds, then I've had a fabulous day. If I go deer hunting, then I only usually shoot 1 buck a year, maybe 2, but it's got to be a really nice buck, and I've had a fantastic day. If I shoot a nice 110-pound doe, fantastic day. If I kill a turkey with my rule is I don't shoot anything with I'll just be honest. I won't shoot if it's got about a 6-inch or under beard, or 6 inches or under beard, then I've had a great day. But there's guys out there that are way more strict than me, and then there's guys that are less than me. But we have to be honest about trophy hunting. That's what we're all doing, you know. We hope for the very best when we go out there. We're not hoping for, you know, and some people, I believe, because I know them and I grew up like that, being poor, some people do just go out there because I need to shoot something for the table. And I know that's kind of a cliche statement, but gentlemen, it still holds true. And I primarily eat wild game, but it still holds true. But trophy hunting has an economic impact that is absolutely outrageously positive for the species as a whole. And anybody who doesn't understand the good in trophy hunting has no concept of wild game management whatsoever. Because we'll call it what it is. I mean, the deer trophy really applies to antlered or horned animals. Some people apply it to turkeys. You know, there's a scoring system for turkeys. There's a scoring system for bears and all that. But the majority of trophy talk is about antler or horned animals. But in all of those species, when that animal truly hits what would be considered, we'll just call it for lack of, just to be cliche, Boone and Crockett or Pope and Young, that animal's done his deed. He has bred enough, he has lived enough, and he's about to become a drain on the resource, and you just took him right at probably a true trophy is going to be at, in my book, it's after prime. So for a white-tailed deer, it's probably going to be about 5.5 years old in the low country of South Carolina. Obviously, out in Illinois, that's a little bit different entirely. Not necessarily the age, but what the deer is going to look like and all that. So I'm a staunch supporter of trophy hunting. And I've spent time in Africa, and if it wasn't for trophy hunting, I can't tell you how bad that place would be. It's already bad. But
so
if it wasn't,
go ahead. Sorry, finish your thought.
No, so that's just kind of my closing thoughts on it. I am a trophy hunter. I'm not afraid to admit it. Am I always going to shoot trophies? No. But if I'm going out there, I'm going out there for the best specimen of that species that I can get. If I'm in a bunch of, you know, when I go to Arkansas, if I'm in the ducks and I can shoot my limit and keep them all greenheads, because I do try to shoot only drakes of that species. Some species, I mean, honestly, I try to do it with all species, but it's difficult when it comes to certain ones. But it can be done. But yeah, I try that. I mean, that's just, you know, you got to constantly up your game if you want to be at the top of the food chain. And that's, you know, I want to be at the top of the food chain, at the top of my game as a hunter, you know. But trophy hunting, people who bash that, man, I just don't know that they're salvageable. But if they're bashing trophy hunting, they are anti-hunting. Don't make any mistake about that.
So the other day, someone on my friends list shared something. It was a girl, a huge leopard, and she's like, "Well, trophy hunting just makes me sick." Yep. And then, so what I think people think of trophy hunting is really doesn't exist in today's times. Sure, there's poachers, and back in like the early 1900s, people would go to Africa just to kill for the horns or the ivory, and then just leave the elephant or whatever. But really, in today's time, I don't really believe that true trophy hunting exists. I mean, like you hit it on the head earlier. Like, I wonder how many thousands of dollars just for permits go into their economic system, and how many thousands of pounds of meat goes towards the villages there in the local villages there in Africa. And, you know, people like to bring up, well, they shoot giraffes, they shoot elephants. A lot of those animals, too, have either been outcasted by the herd, or like you said, they're after their prime. They're in their old age. They're on the decline. You know what I mean? Like you said, they've done their job. They've reproduced. They've bred cows or does, whatever it is, like whatever the species is, and they've done their job.
Yeah, so, look, if a person believes in cavemen and doesn't believe that cavemen sat around the fire and talked about Uncle Joe and how big the mastodon was that he was killed, and they didn't rib on Uncle Terry because of how small his was, they've lost it. The Native Americans were the same way. I mean, there's no doubt about it. There's plenty of books out there where you were noted as a hunter, and that elevated your status in society. And the more game and the bigger game you took, the more important you were. And we have some of that in all of us. I don't know if you guys ever knew who Tread Barta was, but he was about as rough around the edges as a guy could get. But he had a book called The Barta, or his whole series called The Barta Way. And Barta would tell you straight up, it's in my blood to kill. If Iduka would tell you straight up, it's in my blood to kill. Dr. James Kroll, it's in his blood to kill. It's in my blood to kill animals and eat them. That's what makes me happy. And so, you know, trophy hunting has been around for as long as mankind has been around. Now, it might be, you touched on something, that some people put the definition of trophy hunting as, I killed this big animal and now I'm going to just hang the head on the wall and waste the meat. That's idiocy. That's never happened. I mean, and for Christ's sakes, not in Africa. I mean, I've got pictures, you know, of blue wildebeest and warthogs that we kill where the locals are literally eating the contents of the stomach. I mean, they don't waste. Animals are not wasted in Africa. And I don't care. I'll promise you this, every part of that leopard that lady hunter killed were utilized. And furthermore, what these people don't get is that there is a PH professional hunter on all of these concessions that knows the amount of wild game by species within probably plus 5 to 10%, minus 5 to 10% of his herds. He knows the predator load on his concession, and he knows probably those predators by visual cue, by behavioral traits, by tracks on the ground, and he knows which one. It's been there for 10 years. Like, he knew, hey, this leopard's 9 years old, it's at the peak, it's a male, we've got another up-and-coming male over here. There's going to be a problem between the two. They're liable to kill each other. I don't want them to kill each other, so we're going to take this one out. That's the way it actually works. Same thing with elephants, same thing with hippos. You know, now, had mankind never been created, Mother Nature would work itself out. But Genesis tells us clearly that we're in charge of working it out as far as animals go. So, anyway. But
I think it just goes back to, on anything, people just need to educate, and they need to do their own research, and they need to keep feeling. I think the big thing is they see it, oh, it's a kitty cat, it's a leopard. And it's all feelings based too. I think a lot of it's feeling based.
Yeah, well, so Levi, when you're living in a society as soft as, say, I mean, and there's various factions within our nation that still aren't soft, but I'm in Charleston, South Carolina, and there's the softest group of people I've ever seen that live around me. And so when you live, and it used to be all tough hunters and fishermen, but, you know, as you go into farm country, you always find what I consider to be tougher people, and they're more thankful of the blessings they have, and they are more in tune with the planet Earth and the soil and the trees and everything else. And the closer you get to the city, the more out of tune people are. And so it's only safe to assume that at that point humanity starts taking over. And you've seen the, you know, crazy memes about a lady sitting there eating a Big Mac, and she's like going, I can't believe that you shot a deer while she's eating a Big Mac. You know, I mean.
What's wrong with you? Get your meat from the store.
What's that?
So what's wrong with you? Get your meat from the store like everyone else.
Yeah. I mean, these people don't understand that when I take an animal, that animal has lived a nice, healthy life. It's typically doing exactly what it wanted to do when I take the shot, and I always shoot for a very clean, ethical kill, versus an animal that's lived in its slop, being injected with all kinds of tweedle twaddles and jigamaros to enhance growth and decrease disease risk, and then it's popped in the back of the head with a hammer and drug out with a forklift. And hey, I'm gonna tell you straight up, I ain't got no problem with eating a big steak that was treated just that way. Doesn't bother me a bit. God put animals on this planet for us to, go forth, rise, kill, and eat. And I'm all about it. So, but yeah, the anti-hunting sentiment is giant. But trophy hunting, that's one argument that the anti-hunter uses. And it's really a dumb argument, because when I'm trophy hunting, I'm doing the very best thing for the herd possible. And that's taking an animal that's already done his thing, past his genetic stock or her genetic stock, and is now about to be a burden on the food source, which all flows back to delta K, or optimum sustained yields on the landscape. So I'm a trophy hunter, gentlemen. Join me in it.
Absolutely. I mean, you hit it on the head too. It's like, not every hunter doesn't go in the woods wanting to shoot. Like, oh, I got the buck on camera. You know what I mean? They're after an older deer, like you said, after its prime, or one that's good 4.5-year-old buck, five, like you said, around the. So I mean, everyone's a trophy hunter, but I think everyone's also a meat hunter as well.
Absolutely.
And then, but I mean, that's another thing too, is that these people that do go on these African trips, and kill and a leopard or a lion, and then you have, when they come back and they post pictures on social media or show their friends, however it gets out, right? You have people get all this flack, and normally the people, they're supposed to be like the tolerant people, right? So I mean, and they're telling people to kill themselves, and that's another reason why, like you said at the beginning, like hunters really do need to stick together, because I mean, like, we face a lot of flack from, it may not be every day, it may not be every year, but I mean, a lot of this stuff is really, like, I don't know how people can say that to another human being just because they shot an animal.
So the way, there's two ways to go about doing it. First, what you're talking about. Number one, whenever I see somebody busting somebody's chops about something like that, I weigh it out. Is it something I need to get involved in or not? Is it something that I have an intelligent answer to or not? Or is it something I just want to pile on and throw a DDT into? 9 times out of 10, you can read by the tone if that person is, or by the syntax, if that person is willing or open to listen. And I've had a lot of luck in using that softness or that humanity to open up the conversation. Because when I tell a person that, hey, and I had a recent conversation with a customer of mine about coyotes. He's got a love of coyotes. And this will throw you guys for a loop, but so do I, because I respect the bejesus out of them. But I respect them enough to shoot every daggum one I see, and I encourage people to trap and shoot them. But you cannot help but respect that creature. But he loves them. I mean, loves them. And so I was trying to explain to him why we needed to control their population, and he was so belligerent. And then I got down to the point, and I was like, hey, here's the deal. There's the predator and the prey. It's a bell-shaped curve. It goes up and it goes down. It follows one another. I'm like, if we properly manage the prey and properly manage the predator, then we don't have mass die-off. And he was like, what do you mean mass die-off? And I was like, literally, when they all starve to death, man, and they start getting diseased and mange and, parvo because their immune system's so busted down, that's called mass die-off. But if we control the population, intelligently control the population, study it, research, and control it, then we can ensure that we don't get this massive die-off. Sudden, he was open to coyote populations being controlled. One of the rare cases. Most of these people, like we just said, have been so coddled and lived such a soft life. And I mean, they've never had their hands in the dirt. They've never grown a squash or a green bean or pulled the hide off a deer, or let alone, I mean, some of them have never even cooked, man. I mean, it's just the product of the absolutely phenomenal country that we live in. all it takes is to leave this country, drop down into Central America, go to Africa, go to Australia, go to New Zealand, for that matter, you can go into Canada and just see how absolutely easy we have it here. And then you can start seeing how people's minds start going, bouncing off the wall and taking these insane vectors that have absolutely nothing to do with the reality of what it takes. There's a couple of truisms out there. Necessity is the mother of invention. Hard hands make good minds, and hardships build strength, and all these things are true. That's why the greatest generation on our planet Earth, on this country, was the generation that's World War II. I mean, guys, that was tough living then. Tough living then.
Absolutely.
We don't have a clue, even me. I was born at the end of Vietnam, and I've done some stuff overseas in various parameters. I've never worn the military uniform improper, but I've been around and done enough things to see the brutality that truly exists and how soft and easy we have it here. We are the number one creature comfort place on the planet Earth. And so when you have that, you have people that are lost from that reality of what is real. And that's what anti-hunting comes down. I'm anti-poaching as big as they come, but, I support all forms of legal hunting, the end, and period. But that's a big one we got to watch out for. They're so devious, so slick, and hunters, for some reason, just such a small faction of hunters that are paying attention, that literally get involved, and that'll be the death of us all. That'll be the death of our sport, our culture, Second Amendment.
Yeah, man. So it's definitely kind of a.
There's a lot of things going on come November, and I hope that we all rise up what we need to do for our rights and our culture.
Yeah. But yeah, going back to what you were saying about just going to different countries. I know Ben, he's never been deployed because he's in the Air Force, but I went to.
That's not true. It's not true.
I went to
That was low.
I went to 13. I went to 13 different countries in 7 months on my deployment I was on, and it was just every other we went to some nice countries, and we went to some not so nice countries, and it was cool to go see, but by about month 5 or 6. Every time we pulled in, it was just like, I just want to be home. There really is no place like home. So, we went to Romania and Bulgaria, and you have the main square, right, where the casinos are and the touristy stuff. But just like Mexico, once you get outside that tourist trap, I guess, there's favelas. There's just those tenements. There's not really a whole lot there. You can say that a lot about cities in America too, but it's just really no place like home.
No, there's not. We live on the greatest country on the planet, basically planet Earth.
Yeah, it's all relative, right? So, but like he said, you can see that kind of stuff around the United States, but there's still nothing like being able to do what we want to do. Whenever we want to do it, as long as we're not infringing on somebody else. And so, you can go somewhere else and you can say, man, this place is awesome. But when you compare it to what you're allowed to do in this country and what the way you can live your life in this country, you compare it the way you can live your life in that other country, it's not the same. And so, it's just there's nothing like it. We're all hunters. You name me another country that has hunting on a scale that we have, and a community with hunting on the scale that we have, and you can't name one. But the thing is that you're also fighting, as you said, people trying to take it away from us, people trying to make us like those other countries, and and I think it's a kind of a scary thing when you look at it, because uh, if those people get their way and it's too far gone, it's not coming back. So that's the scariest thing to me, and that's why I think we should all be trying to do our part to try to keep it from getting that way.
Ben, you're absolutely correct. And the first part of getting that done is waking everybody up. I see so many of these new hunting groups, and it's just a bunch of guys posting pictures of stuff they've killed. That's great. And I'm not going to lie, when I was younger, I posted stuff because it kind of shows everybody who I am as a hunter. It's like, big chief, me kill lots of duck, me kill big buck, me kill blah, blah, blah. It's like chest thumping. Now that I'm on the back side of that, which has been maybe a week, I really care more about the species and the game management. And we're missing a very, very important part here. And I like to wrap it up together. Somebody, and I don't know who it was, but we've all seen it, says, take a kid hunting now so you won't have to hunt for them later. And if you look at the culture that surrounds hunting, at least from my perspective, the greatest hunts of my life were not when I took the most animals or the biggest animals, but they were when I was hunting with my family, and especially around Thanksgiving or Christmas. And I live for that. Like, to this day, that's what I live for. I live to be able to deer hunt with my father and to duck hunt with a couple of my close buddies around those holidays. It's a unity of friends and family. So we might be missing that these people are really after our guns and so much more, that maybe they're after that and our unity and our freedom. Because you've all heard, united we stand, divided we are conquered. And there's some truth to that. There's just some people out there in this world that have so much money, and I don't understand why they don't just go buy a ranch in Wyoming and go elk hunting, and an island in Panama and go sail fishing or bill fishing and just be happy, instead of keeping their freaking hands and minds and what I do. But they're so power greedy and hungry that they just can't sit still and be happy with themselves. And I know where they're going to wind up in life. We all do if you're a believer, But I sure do wish they'd just go ahead and get there, because they are doing their best to tear everything that's good down in this country. I mean, it's crazy, man. I mean, if it's good, and I believe that American values are good. Do I think that we've been overseas and stuck our noses in some things where we shouldn't have? Yeah, absolutely. But I'd say 90% of what this country, 98%, let's make it that much, I'll step out there, has been, even if it benefited some people, it was better for that country while we were there doing what we did than when it was before we got there. Elsewise, we never would have gone, And some things, Vietnam was a tough one, but a lot of good came out of Vietnam. But my point all the way back to it is family and unity and hunting and sitting at the table eating wild game are just something that is designed by God. We're supposed to do it, and it's who I am. And it's under attack. And we could point fingers at the reasons all day long, but all I can tell you is it's under attack, and I can tell you that it's under attack from the very top down. And, these keywords that I want to leave you guys with are apex predator introduction, single species selective management, the Endangered Species Act, which, if you think about it, has done nothing but cost billions of dollars, and most of those same species are teetering still on the existence of going extinct. And there is a such thing as habitat change and a species just non-selective towards the habitat. I mean, the Earth has changed since it was, what is the Earth, 36 billion years old or something like that, some crazy number. I mean, it's been changing ever since the good Lord slapped his hands and we came into existence. So just you got to keep your eyes open for that stuff. And a lot of times people that you think are supposed to be in that position to do the job are absolutely undermining the job that they're supposed to be doing. I've seen it way too many times for it to be a coincidence. Way too many.
You said something about, especially around Thanksgiving, Christmas time frame, about getting around from family, eating deer or turkey, whatever, wild turkey, ducks, whatever. I know, especially talking with Matt and Josh about when they said they lost their dad. And that's something I really took for granted, especially growing up in high school, stuff like that. Hunting with an old man. We're just friends, family. And then when I got in the military, I really, like, that's why we have our annual like hunting trips now. Just because like we really don't get to we don't get to hunt that much anymore, being him living in Indiana, me being down here. So I mean that's a great point, and I think we've said it numerous times on our podcast, Ben. But it's just I think the reason why I still hunt is because I want to take my daughter, which you guys have seen if you're watching on YouTube, in and out of the podcast, and her yelling in the background right now. But I mean I want that same thing to have with my daughter, and if we have another kid, whatever, I want to be able to share that same experience with her as my dad did with me. So
Absolutely, man. So that's how things pass down. You only know what your mom and dad taught you, sometimes what your friends get you into, or sometimes people just have this odd interest in something and they just go try it out on themselves. But as you can imagine, if you didn't have someone to show you the ropes of hunting, you probably wouldn't be a hunter. You mentioned the Townsend boys, Townsend brothers. Those guys are a really good example of good people, and they get it. And they are going more and more towards the actual education of the hunter and of the species, and getting into, they already knew what habitat was, but talking about it. So we got to talk about what proper habitat is. And I'm going to tell you something, just from talking to those two guys, I sure would have liked to have met their daddy, because he raised some fine young men in those two gentlemen right there. He really did.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
But something to leave you guys with is, you know, there's what's called curative and preventative medicine. Curative is when you're already sick and the doctor goes, take this and you're going to get better. Preventative is when the doctor looks at you and says, if you don't want to get sick, here's what you need to do. Well, in my opinion, wild game populations and the hunting agenda and where hunting is going is beyond the preventative. We could have done a whole lot of things different. We could have voted better. We could have showed up to meetings. And right now we're faced with ever decreasing habitat loss, development on the increase, anti-hunting movements getting their way. There's just a lake down in Florida that was shut down to hunting. A part of Lake Waterbury this past year was shut down to hunting that had always been open to hunting. So we're in a curative state of affairs with hunting. The good news is there is a cure, because there are a lot of hunters in the United States of America. And we typically are pretty driven, but just like in most things, I think with our culture, like guys like you and me ain't going to go out and really raise super cane until someone's really stepping on our toes, kicking us in the shin. And that's what they're counting on. I mean, they're counting on it being too late before we all rise up. So, you know, our American culture has always been tied. And if you think about it, American culture is tied so tightly to hunting that families literally subsisted off of it in the Great Depression. Today, the Great Depression is hardly even talked about, let alone if it was something of that magnitude where a specific action kept families alive, such as hunting did, you sure would think it'd be talked about in a good light a whole lot more than it is. And it used to be 4-H was a big thing. I mean, you had various activities in the school. You know, you had shop class, you had vocational schools, and all that stuff is getting moved aside with the rest of our culture. And as we know, whatever we're doing sure ain't working. We've had 3 or 4 good years out of the past 12, 14, 15 years that I can tell. But it seems like each time I blink an eye, some little right is yanked away from us. And, you know, I hope that everybody will rise up, pull their shoulders back, and square off, and don't be afraid when they see somebody talking bad about trophy hunting to explain to them what trophy hunting really is, how it helps the species. Don't be afraid to speak up against the Endangered Species Act and the money that's been wasted there. Now, do I want to see the polar bear go extinct? No. But do I want you to eradicate all the penguins because of a polar bear? No. Do I want you to get rid of white-tailed deer, turkeys, bobwhite quail because of a woodpecker? No. Do I want that woodpecker to go extinct? No. But guess what? There are ways to work around things so that everything benefits. In wild game management, here's another cue, gentlemen. It ain't rocket science. It's just not. And these agencies want to keep talking about it like it is rocket science. It is not. It's nowhere remotely close. If a person can keep a fish aquarium, they can manage wild game. All it is literally keeping the habitat in a functioning order, keeping the predator levels at control, making sure that that animal has some form of sanctuary and peace, and giving it the food varieties that it likes. It is not rocket science. And that applies to all wild game. That applies to ducks, to turkeys, to bobwhite quail, to white-tailed deer. There's such a small structural basis, but to listen to some of these people talk, you would think that they were trying to build a space shuttle with just a 9mm socket and a hammer. And we got a problem. But it comes down to our culture and our values and protecting that stuff. And it's my personal opinion that hunting is one of the big things that bonds the American heritage and the American family together. It always has. And I mean, those were the exceptional writers of the time. So I don't know what else you guys want to ask or closing, but, you know, my thoughts are God bless America, God bless American culture. We got to stand up and fight and do what's right. Protecting hunting protects your Second Amendment, and be aware to the attack. It's out there, and they make all kinds of excuses, and people are going to tell me I've lost my mind. There's a lot of people that understand what I'm talking about because they've immersed themselves in it deep enough. But from this podcast, when some of the upper levels at the Department of Natural Resources hear about it, they're going to go through the roof.
I meant to ask you earlier, how many shit lists are you on?
I don't break any laws whatsoever. I'm very, very, very proficient with a handgun, or any other type of long gun. I'm 50 years old and can bench 315 for 4 and run a really good 40 still. So anybody whose list of that nature that I'm on, they'd better be ready to roll.
Say when. Say when.
Say, you better whisper it because my ears still work real good. I'm definitely out there on some lists. I mean, like I said, gentlemen, it goes back to leadership, emphasis, and accountability.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure, man.
Yeah, and we can do better. I'll tell you the truth. I do better on about a 20th of the money the state gets. You know, I just picked up a 400-acre piece down in the Johns Island area. The guy wants to increase everything. He told me his budget, and it's not a lot, but I guarantee in 3 years I'll have that place popping. You know, it's not rocket science. But
so I got a last question for me. Like these positions that you're talking about, like these high up positions, are they are they public? Like, can anyone run for them, or does that have to be like admitted to, or is it just like, is again just politics and whoever, like, you have to know someone type deal?
You
I'm
say
sure.
politics?
Well, it's politics and everything. I mean, if there's politics in high school football,
So this is what I'll tell you. The last director of the Department of Natural Resources was a hunter, a fisherman, a proponent of law enforcement. He was the real deal. That was Alvin Taylor. The position just changed hands recently, and the old deputy director of marine fisheries, Robert Boyles, got the job, and Robert runs a very tight ship at the South Carolina Marine Resource Division. I mean, they run like clockwork. You will never hear me say anything ill against South Carolina Marine Resource Division, meaning marine fisheries, because by George, those boys are on it. Their research is good. It's validated. The controls and variables are always categorized, talked about, not hidden. And the limits that they place out there, and they always come out, like with the flounder thing, they come out to the public and go, hey, what do you guys think about this? Even if they know they're going to take flack for it, they do it. The other side of the coin, not so much, which is the freshwater fisheries and wildlife. That's a bad cup of tea to drink right there. And it's really been bad for about 8 years, 9 years. It's just not good. It's not good. I mean, now if that same thing had happened and everything was going boom, the waterfowl cat ones from the upstate to the coast were in great shape. Food plots are in great shape. Populations of turkeys, the management protocols, research, and all that stuff was going good. Man, I'd be singing praises, but none of that's going right. None. Zero whatsoever. Like nada. And that's just unacceptable, man.
sounds like we need to get David Strickland up there, raise some hell.
Nah, I got too many skeletons in my closet, man. Yeah, I've been around. I got people telling me I need to run for this or that, and I'm like, nah.
Yeah.
My mom and dad named me after David from the character in the Bible. And there's only one or two things, maybe three things that David did that I haven't. They'd have a heyday, with me. I'd like to say I'm a really good dude, and I am. And I'm honest, and I'm as trustworthy as they come. But when I was a young man, I was a heathen. I mean, hey, when they talk about redemption, I'm an example of it, gentlemen. I mean, that's the bottom line. I'm as good now as I've ever been, and I never would have known the things that I know now had I not have been, immersing myself into those arenas where, testing the waters that I never should have tested. Or some people say you can't offer testimony. You can't offer testimony if you don't know. There's some scripture about that, and I don't mean to go biblical on you guys, but I am a fairly strong believer. And
no, you're good.
Yeah. So anyhow, that's all I got, man. I got to get back to it. I greatly appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity.
David,
for any listeners out there that are with the, thank you. For any listeners out there that are with the Department of Natural Resources or the U.S. Forest Service, and you guys feel threatened because of some of the things that I've talked about to you, and you want to reach out to me, you don't know how to find me. And I appreciate those of you who already do. Because with you guys, that's how we're going to make a difference, And we got to get things back on the right track. We got to protect our hunting heritage, and we got to protect this country and our families and our friends and our faith.
Right, absolutely. So again, I know there's a lot of South Carolina listeners on here. You guys own property, you want it managed right, go to Mr. David Strickland.
No. I'm not taking any more clients.
Oh, you're not?
I'll help you out. No.
I'll try to help you. I'll give you a little plug, but that's fine.
No, hey man, okay. If you want to help me out, if you guys want to help me out, you join the Carolina Wildlife Syndicate. Your voice counts. Unifying the voices of the hunters. It's amazing that the politicians, and I have several congressmen that are on my side, have carte blanche told me with just the numbers on social media, the amount of pull that you have within the Congress, and like right now, there's like 3 or 4 congressmen I can call. They'll pick up the telephone because they know I'm no BS. If I've got an issue, it's going to be a real issue, and I'll give credit to a couple of them right now, Philip Lowe and Stephen Goldfinch. Some people don't like either one of them. I'm not going to say I agree with either one of them on everything they say. They wouldn't say the same thing about me. And when it comes to our sporting heritage and our hunting heritage, those 2 guys and Jeff Duncan as well, those guys are there. Campson's there too, but I need to get him on the horse a little harder, spurring that horse a little harder than he is. So
even if there's a listener in Illinois, okay, I got you. So even if someone's in Illinois, Missouri, like Midwest, they can still join Carolina Syndicate, voice their opinion, and it's not just for North or South Carolina, right?
Oh no, I mean you're looking at just the issues that are going on in the South Carolina area, but it really applies to the Southeast. I mean, what I've found, and actually, it's not even just the Southeast. I mean, it stretches all the way out into Arkansas. The Dakotas are having some of our same issues right now, and people, as I have grown, other people have reached out to me. Josh Goins, who's a phenomenal guy, the founder of the Flyway Federation. Him and I do a lot of talking. His big mission statement is all of the free pouring of grains in the National Wildlife Refuges of Canada, all the flooded crops that are being paid for via the Farm Bill, which the guy's then turning around and hunting over, getting paid by the government to leave his crops in the field. He floods them, then he gets paid again to hunt over them, and how the abundance of flooded corn is forestalling the natural migration of waterfowl. Him and I are going back and forth on that all the time. We both have a little bit of the same belief, a little bit of different beliefs, but the whole ice eating, ice manipulation, and all that stuff, we see eye to eye on, and we see eye to eye on a lot of the baiting issues as well. I just worry that we may have artificially inflated already low population numbers, and if we were to knock out all flooded baiting right now, such as corn, it would not apply to rice, that we don't know what amount of the waterfowl population we might hurt. So him and I are working on some things, going through that right now before it gets presented to Congress. We're out there. We want to make a difference. I want everybody to have good hunter satisfaction. I want hunters to want to take their kids. I want a dad to have the knowledge in his head and the belief in his head that when he takes his kid out to a national forest, that they have the reasonable expectation of seeing a deer or hearing a turkey. I don't want to hear any of this stuff like, well, I hadn't heard a turkey in 12 times that I've been. I hate hearing that, because that guy's not going to take his kid because he's sick of it.
Yeah.
And that's not the way it should be.
Introduced into a boring experience and not really be so interested in doing it in the future.
That kid's going to be playing Xbox and not wanting to go. He's not going to be wanting his first 410. He's going to be wanting some kind of Warcraft crap-a-mazoo game or whatever those things are. So, I mean, that's what we're pushing for. And we've, if you want to do something for me, and I didn't mean to be like rude, if somebody has a wildlife management question, always they can PM me or call me or something like that, but I'm not taking any more clients.
I got you. I was trying to help you out.
I'll tell you what to do. I'll even look at Google Maps with you and talk on the telephone with you and give you some ideas and some tips. But I'm kind of maxed on that venture right now.
But I mean, there's a couple questions that we didn't even get to, and we'll save for next time if you want to come back on, and like you're touching on again, like the flooded cornfield, stuff like that. That's something else I'd like to dive down the wormhole with you and kind of talk to you about. So
we didn't get into the biology or the physiology of any of this stuff, which is a whole nother topic of which I'm very deeply immersed in. But it doesn't do us any good to be immersed in that stuff if we don't first protect our hunting rights and unify and stand up together. That stuff will be wasted knowledge because we won't be able to hunt. There won't be anything left for us to hunt if it's not properly managed. yeah, I love talking about the physiology, the behavioral characteristics, the migratory characteristics of animals. I mean, I'd like to go into talking with you guys about the MRP program, the mileage release program.
That's something else we didn't get to.
Yeah, man.
But yeah,
CWD needs to be talked about. EHD, all that stuff. Like, those are things that when a lot of guys are watching Yellowstone, I'm reading research papers. That's just the way I am and applying it to what I know. So.
but yeah, I mean, we'd definitely love to have you on again, pick your brain some more if you're willing. And again, guys, make sure you guys go like and follow or join the group, Carolina Wildlife Syndicate. You guys have your 2 cents, or if you have anything to ask him, please, he said, feel free, ask away. So, David, I really appreciate you coming on today, spreading some insight. And this is, I mean, I've learned. I won't say this every week, but I've definitely learned something coming away from this podcast, and that's something. Another reason why I wanted to do this with you, Ben, because I mean, I don't know everything, not even close. And I mean, if it's gonna, again, going back to the hunter certification, if it's gonna help my season or your season or some or listener season, that's what we're trying to do. So I appreciate it, Mr. Strickland. Sorry we took up so much of your time. I'm sure you're ready to get out of your truck, huh?
No, I'm driving, man. I've been sitting in the parking lot of the barbecue restaurant I ate lunch at for the last hour and a half. I had a full belly barbecue. I'm content.
There you go.
Hey, guys, I greatly appreciate what you're doing. I greatly appreciate the fact that you care about, the mission statement of the Carolina Wildlife Syndicate, which is to make every voice count, and that you guys are a part of it. And I would love to go into detail a little more, dive down into the, gears of some of the working systems and, both learn and tell what I already know, because I'm always open to learning more stuff. But God bless you guys, and, never forget that you live in the best country on the planet Earth, and always protect your rights.
Absolutely.
Doubt, thank you so much.
All right, guys.
Thank you again.
Yeah, peace.
That was Mr. David Strickland with Carolina Wildlife Syndicate and Low Country Wildlife Management Consultant. He's not taking anyone else. You heard the man.
I think he was pretty clear about that. I'm a little confused.
He
Is
was.
he taking any more out? Anybody else? No, man.
But
that is one of the most intelligent individuals regarding wildlife management that we have spoke to, and you guys didn't even. I mean, I learned a ton from him, but we didn't even crack the surface on the.
Yeah, let's say we barely scratched the surface of.
But the content and the conversation that he provided, I mean, it's relevant to everybody who enjoys this sport, everybody who enjoys hunting, everyone enjoys the heritage and the community of it.
We got off topic a little bit. We didn't focus really specific on the waterfowl side, but like you said, just the content and the message. I mean, it applies to. I'm sure there's only a handful of people that only waterfowl hunt, Ben. But I mean,
I just primarily waterfowl hunt.
Yeah, I know. But I mean, I'm sure everyone sits in a deer stand at least once or twice a year, and I'm sure everyone goes out every spring and sets out a hen decoy and tries to shoots a tom or a jake. Yeah. So I mean, it applies to all of us. And what he said was very true. And one thing that he touched on that I forgot, but I mean, even if you're not a religious person, I still think being in the woods and hunting is a spiritual aspect of life. Yep. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why. I mean, he mentioned Native Americans at one point, and when he was talking, there's a reason why he mentioned it is because it's not always a religious thing. It's not always they weren't necessarily religious on the same aspect as I am or you are or David was.
Right.
But they still understood, respected, and protected the land. So there's value to it. And we've got to protect, everything that we have in our lives, in our countries, in our livelihood. Because you take hunting away from me, and I'm going to be one depressed man. I mean,
Right.
I will be one
I,
bored and depressed man.
I mean, I don't know how many times that, like, even during the season or a lot of times after the season, it's just like we're like November time frame, like rut duck season comes in. I'm like, I wonder what I'd be doing right now if I didn't hunt. But then I also feel like sorry for the people that don't get to experience all these things that we see on a day-to-day basis. I mean, whether it's bucks fighting or seeing deer breed or turkeys fighting or tornado in Kansas. You know what I mean? Just like that tornado coming down. I mean, I feel sorry for people who don't get to enjoy that and get to experience it, or if they get to experience it, it's through a screen. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I wake up every day. I'm just glad that my dad, he went on his own and he started hunting because he didn't have anyone to show him. So I'm glad he did that. So I can be able to do this. I mean, my bank account's not very happy, but
Yeah,
um,
my wife isn't always okay with it, but
yeah.
I'm happy.
I still haven't told her I was gonna buy that call from Joey,
Oh
that
yeah.
the angel tree. So
Hey man,
I'm gonna need you to send me some more money. So
look, man, I ain't sending you any more money. You sent me this hat, and it took about 5 weeks to get it. And then I canceled the PayPal payment, so you ain't getting any more money of mine.
that's fine. You can just send me 25 on top of the call. It's fine.
Yeah, man. So, but this is just an awesome information to have, awesome
Yeah,
individual to have, and we're gonna have him back, and we'll crack into
absolutely.
we'll crack into the biology part. We'll crack into a little bit more of the wildlife management process of it.
And I really didn't want this podcast to end. But I know that
No,
we're, but I mean,
yeah,
we're going to have to end it sometime. And then like again, we can always have him back on. And he named off 4 topics at the end that we didn't even get to
yeah, that we planned on talking to him about.
that we wanted to, but it's just there's so much that goes into that side, man, just in general. So, and he's very knowledgeable. So I mean, I'm sure that has if he can talk all day on a topic as is, much less 8 or 9 different subtopics or topics. So, guys, I mean, we got to wrap this up. I'm sure a lot of
Yeah.
people are going to start getting pissed. All right.
Yeah.
But no, please invite your friends. We're going to be, we're going to pin the giveaway. We're going to post that in the next couple of days. We're getting a lot of influx of people coming in the next couple of days. Keep an eye out for the giveaway entry. We're going to have you add a friend, add like your hunting buddy, if or just a friend that's not in the group. Tag them in there, and then we're gonna give you a number. And then once we reach 500, we're gonna give a little bit of a couple day time frame for people to come in, get acquainted, and get settled in, and be able to add their friend, so we can give them a number and give the call away. Joey, I mean, he's already. We posted the picture of the blocks of wood that's going to be made into the duck call. So I mean, he's turning it right now as we speak. So, like I said, I, I want to give it away just as much as someone wants to. I'm sure wants to win it. So, but yeah, guys, keep plugging away, keep inviting your friends. But yeah, keep an eye out for the giveaway. We got Colby and Josh next week or later this week. And then we got, I'm sure, Mikkel Goins next week to start off the week, I believe. So, guys, that's there's 2 different topics we haven't really talked about. We're going to talk about like Alaska out west trips, like out west, not North Dakota, but west trips. And that beast, I mean, there's a whole different birds that we haven't even talked about that's in that western part of the states or the country. So we're going to talk about that with Colby and Josh. Tips to save money, networking. Colby's really good with networking. And then with Mikkel, we're going to talk about guide services and just what to look for in a guide and a guide service. So that's a whole another realm we haven't even touched on. So I'm sure that's going to be a really good podcast for people who he doesn't have a whole lot of time to take. You know, me and Ben, we get 30 days of PTO a year. Not everyone gets that. Some people would get 5 days or a week, and they just want to go out and take 3 days and kill as many birds as they can and come home, and that's fine. So we're gonna cover that. So keep an eye out for those 2 episodes, guys.
Yeah, so if you have not liked the Around the Blind Facebook page, head over, like that page. Go check out the Carolina Wildlife Syndicate. Like that page. Get involved with what's going on over there.
That will be linked.
Yep, that will be linked within the description. So you can find me, Benji1189, on Twitter, Instagram, and then Levi. We have our YouTube page, at the Bow Hunting Vet. Levi creates other content, so he does have other videos outside of.
It's not as good as this,
podcast.
but I mean, it's content.
Yeah. So subscribe, subscribe on whatever podcast listening site you are on, and then.
Oh, and if you're on Apple, please leave 5 stars or however many stars you think we're good for. I mean, if you think we're 3-star quality, that's fine. Leave a comment, and I know we posted last night in the Facebook page. Please, like, when we post something, when we say like, hey, let us know what you think. We really do. We really want to know what you guys think. Are you guys enjoying it? Not enjoying it? Are they too long? Too short? Are we not covering something that you guys want to hear? So please, I mean, if you're at this point, you're pretty a loyal listener. So I mean, please let us know. We're not gonna bite your head off. We're not gonna get upset. We're not gonna get, you know what I mean. We want the feedback, whether it's good or bad. So please let us know.
Yep. So this has been the Round the Blind podcast. We will see you with Colby and Josh. Thanks for listening.